Hi everyone, I'm Katherine Kadechka, speech language pathologist, myofunctional therapist, yoga instructor, and owner of Myoga Speech. Today I wanted to share with you a shorter Yin Yoga routine that I put together with myofunctional goals in mind. For those who are not familiar with Yin Yoga, it differs from other forms of yoga in three main ways. The first being we're going to hold the poses for longer periods of time. This can be anywhere from 90 seconds and on. Today we're going to keep it a little shorter, but in other classes that I might teach in studio, we might be in these poses for upwards of 3 to 4 minutes. The second being is finding stillness in the poses. Now, this is where a lot of us tend to struggle trying to think about what we need to do next, what pose is going to come next, trying to get that ultimate stretch, but just letting your body be and just focusing on your breath to really allow your body to be still. And the last is when you're in the stretch or the pose, we want to find what is referred to as a Goldilocks edge or a gentle edge. I like the Goldilocks because it's not too much, not too little, but just enough. So for your class today, it's recommended if you have a bolster, like I have here, you can always have pillows. You can stack 2 pillows. I like to have blocks. These are cork blocks, foam blocks work just as well. And blankets or towels, I like to fold them up. Sometimes I might roll them, but we're going to use these props today to support our body against gravity. By supporting our body, we're able to find that gentle edge, to find stillness, and really start to let go in our poses. So with that, we're going to get started with our first pose, one of my favorites that I do daily, called toes pose. So for toes pose, we're going to come onto our knees like this. We're going to roll our toes under so all 10 toes are facing the front of your mat. You might have to reach behind to get your pinkies, toes to align. And then we're just going to allow our body to rest here. Now, for those who don't do this pose often, you might start to feel some tightness or might start to feel an extreme sensation in the bottom of your feet. You have the option to bring a block in front of you just to take some weight off your feet. And once you find your Goldilocks edge, just come to your breath. Let your inhale be gentle. Your exhale long. We'll be here for about another minute. The bottom of our feet is an area of thick fascia. There's lots of connective tissue there. And if you wear shoes a lot, do a lot of running, this tissue can become tight. I am one who doesn't like to wear shoes, so mine are pretty flexible at this point, but I do the stretch often. Continue to breathe. Start to shift your weight forward. Move a block out of the way. Come on to your hands and maybe do a little pitter patter of your feet just to help bring sensation into your feet. Now, if you need a break here, if you're feeling lots of tingling in your feet, then listen to your body and give your body that break. But then we'll move into an ankle stretch. So we stretch the bottoms of our feet, and now we're going to move to the fronts of our ankles. So for the ankle stretch, we're just going to shift our weight backwards. And maybe you lift your knees a lot like I do, or maybe your knees stay on the ground. You just want to feel a nice stretch sensation here in the front of your ankles. Remember, it's that Goldilocks edge. Not too much, not too little, but just enough that you can hold it for a couple minutes, or in this case, about a minute will be here. I always like to start with the feet and the ankles because our feet and ankles do a lot for us throughout the day. Allow them to open up. Just focus on your breath. If sensation becomes too much, then you can take a layer off. Maybe bring your knees down. We'll shift our weight forward. And we'll go ahead and repeat that pitter patter again. Now, as you're ready, we're going to move into a tabletop pose, or just also known as being on your hands and knees. Allow your fingers to face forward, your hips over your knees. And here I invite a cat and cow. You can go inwards. Inhale for cow. Exhale for cat. I like to go slow here, just really feel every vertebrae in my spine stretch. Now, as you're doing cat and cow, try to maintain a complete tongue to palate suction, especially in your cow. Your tongue tips should be on spot and the rest of your tongue upwards to follow. We'll do 2 more rounds of this. Maybe you can move your neck a little bit. Just do what feels good in your body. This is your practice. No one else can tell you how to feel except you. Now from here, we're going to go into a melting heart pose. So this is going to be a nice opportunity to really open up the front of our chest. If you're someone who sits a lot for work during the day, staring at a computer, maybe you're a therapist and you're looking down at patients throughout the day, the connective tissue in the back of our shoulders here and our neck tends to get really tight in this way. So this is a nice way to really open up the chest and allow it just to have a nice subtle stretch. I recommend to grab a block or maybe a blanket that you fold up to support either your chest or your head. Your expression, the pose may look different than mine does, and that's totally fine. So from our tabletop, we're just going to walk our hands forward, and maybe your forehead will meet the mat, maybe your chest will meet the mat. I like to rest my forehead on the mat and allow my chest to rest on the block, which allows me to open up more and find stillness. Once you're here, ground into both of your kneecaps evenly. Make sure your hips are even and you're not pushing to one side or the other. Allow your shoulders to soften. Keep your tongue to your palate. Allow your body to breathe here. With each exhale, soften your body more. I'm going to come out of the pose, but you stay in for a few more moments. Maybe you can feel the muscles of your forehead soften and relax against the mat. Maybe you feel your shoulders fall away from your ears slightly. And allow your body to be supported by your block or your towel. We'll be here for a few more breaths. Think about having a longer exhale with your breath to cue your parasympathetic rest and digest. Now on your next exhale, very slowly start to push your body weight upwards. And go ahead and take this opportunity to take whatever organic movement feels good in your body after holding melting heart. Maybe you can open up a little bit. And then we're going to move into a crocodile pose. So when we transition between our poses, try to move slower than your body might want you to. By moving slow, it helps keep our body in that lower, our nervous system in that calmer state, because when we're eager to move quickly between poses, it sort of revs our nervous system up more. And we're really trying to open up our connective tissue more and our fascia. And what we're learning through the research is connective tissue fascia responds to the nervous system, our parasympathetic response, more than it does our volitional, like static stretching. So for crocodile pose, we're going to come on to the front of our body. We're going to stack our hands, our arms parallel to the front of the mat. Allow the tops of your feet to rest. And we're going to rest our forehead now on top of stacked hands. I'm going to come out. You stay in. In your crocodile pose, this is more of a restorative pose that we use to help us transition to poses. Here, really try to feel your lower rib cage as you breathe in. Maybe you might feel it press against the earth. Maybe you let the muscles of your thighs relax more as if the bones in your legs are getting heavier toward the mat. Just try to let your body feel as if it's completely melting down. Few more breaths here. From our crocodile, we're going to come into a Sphinx pose. So for Sphinx pose, you're going to keep your lower body just as it is. And you're going to come up onto your elbows. Now you want to start with your elbows underneath your shoulders broad, your arms parallel in an 11 shape toward the top of your mat. Now, if you feel any tightness in your lower back and your neck, then walk your arms a handprint forward and just see if that relieves any tension you might be feeling. Keep your chin parallel to the mat, tongue to palate here. I refer to Sphinx pose as tummy time for adults, because like the tummy time we do for our babies, allowing them to open up after being in the womb, curled up, and gaining strength and helping them to eventually crawl and walk. Avoid any tendency to shrug your shoulders and try to keep your shoulders open and broad. Now, if it feels good in your body, you can bring an ear to a shoulder and just very slowly bring your chin down, starting to stretch your neck. Move on to the other side. Maybe you go backwards. I always like to feel a nice stretch in my chin and neck area. As a lifelong mouth breather, this area is very tight in my own body. Just explore here with these movements. I always like to say move with curiosity rather than expectation. Just see how things feel. Maybe move slower than you want to. If you're only moving in one direction, go ahead and reverse that so we're even out on both sides and go to the other direction. Come back to center, chin parallel to the ground, shoulders broad, tongue to palate. And we'll be here for a few breaths. Crocodile pose. We'll return to crocodile. This time stack the opposite hand on top that you had and rest your forehead again on top of stacked hands. I'm coming out. You stay in. Allow your shoulders to fall apart from each other. Your body to feel heavy against the mat. Maybe notice each point of contact with your body in the mat. Maybe where your thighs, your kneecaps. Maybe notice the tops of your feet. And just try to soften in each of those places, maybe just 1% more. About 2 more breaths here. With little effort, little energy, start to push your body up to a tabletop. And here I'm going to invite a downward dog. This is just an opportunity, not really a yin pose, but an opportunity to give the back of our body a nice stretch, the back of our legs, our back, our arms, our shoulders. Raise your hips up to the sky. Release any tension in your shoulders, fingers and toes all pointing forward. And allow your heels to shine down toward the mat. Now, I always like to give a bend in my knees because it allows me to get a little deeper here. See, my heels aren't even touching all the way, and that's totally fine. You can walk your dog like I was doing, just to invite a little bit of soft movement before we go into our next pose. Come to a tabletop. At any point, you can grab some water, stay hydrated. Yin isn't really too active, but it's always important to drink. Our next pose is going to be a wide-legged child's pose. So you're going to open your knees the width of your mat, bring your big toes to touch, And we're just going to melt our body down toward the ground. Now, if there's any space at all between your hips and your shins, your calves, grab your blanket, whether it's folded or rolled, and go ahead and place it in that space. What we're doing is we're giving your hips support so that way you can find that Goldilocks edge and hold this pose for a little bit of time. You have the option to use your bolster here or your pillows and just rest your body on the bolster instead. You can rest a cheek, a forehead. Just do what feels best for your body. I'm going to adjust for my own practice here. Do what feels best for you, which may look a lot different than what I'm doing. Relax your shoulders away from your ears. Try to soften your hips here. Maybe you can gently roll your forehead against the mat, massaging the space between your eyes. You stay in as I come out. As you're in your child's pose, really think about your breath. Feel your rib cage expand, which helps move your diaphragm muscle. Make your exhale 1 to 2 seconds longer than your inhale. We'll be here for about 2 more breaths. Now, as if moving through honey, slowly start to push your way up. And from here, we're going to go into a pigeon pose. Now, pigeon pose can be a bit intense if you haven't done this, as it really targets those deep muscles in our hips. So an option, if I'm going to show a modified version, which is going to be a supine figure 4, where you can come onto your back, cross a leg over a knee, and you may even lift your knee, just hold the pose as so. So you should feel a nice stretch in your glutes. Now this is the modified version. For a full pigeon, and grab one of your blankets if you have it. Gonna bring your right knee to your right wrist. Extend your left leg long behind you. Peek over your shoulder to make sure your leg's coming straight out. You might grab your blanket and place it underneath your hips for support if there's any space between your hips and the earth. And then you can melt your body down toward the mat. I'm going to take this out. And really try to visualize your breath going to your glutes here. You stay in pose as I come out. In your pigeon pose, keep your tongue against your palate and visualize your rib cage expanding in all directions with your inhales, and your rib cage coming inwards on your exhales to really activate your diaphragm muscle, which pulls on your psoas muscle, which is connected to the muscle of your hips. So even by breathing, we're getting more activation of our muscles in addition to the stretch that we're holding here in our hips. A few more breaths here. At any point this starts to become too intense, do take that as a sign to come out of the pose. Maybe you can move into the supine figure 4 that I demonstrated. Maybe you do something else, or maybe you just do nothing and wait. At no point in our practice today do we want to experience pain. 2 more breaths here. Now very slowly, because we were working some deep muscles here in our hips, start to come out, however that looks for you, with as little effort and energy as possible. I always like to extend my leg backwards. I was just bent to get a nice little stretch. And as you're ready, we'll take that on the opposite side. This time, bring your left knee to your left wrist. Extend your right leg long behind you, making sure it's coming straight out of your hips and not at a funky angle. You can grab your blanket and place it underneath your hips if there's any space. Maybe bring your bolster in front of you and you can rest your body on the bolster. But otherwise, just start to melt your body again down toward the mat. You might notice you stay in, I come out. You might notice that one side of your hips is tighter than the other side. That's completely normal, especially if we're used to sitting in one way crisscross often throughout the day. Allow your shoulders to completely give way. Feel the movement of your rib cage. With each exhale, notice your body get slightly softer, no matter how small the change. About 2 to 3 more breaths here. See if you can find stillness in these last few moments of pigeon. Now with very slow energy, as if you're moving like a sloth, start to come up and come out of the pose the best way for your body. Take organic movement if that feels good. Like you see here, I like to extend my leg out and kind of rock back and forth a little bit. Now for our next pose, one of my favorites, and this will be our last pose for the day before our final Shavasana. We're going to come onto our seat. Now grab your bolster or your pillows, and you're going to bring them behind you. Grab your blocks or maybe your rolled up blankets, your books, whatever you have accessible to you. You're going to bring your feet to touch, forming a diamond shape. Place the blocks or supports underneath your knees. We're going to go into a supported fish pose with butterfly legs. So as you're ready, you're just going to start to go backwards. Allow your back to find your bolster. Maybe when you get down, you need to readjust your knees a little bit. And here you can sort of play around too. The closer your ankles are to your hips, the more you're going to feel the stretch in your groin area. The further away your ankles are from your hips, the more you're going to feel it in your outer legs and glutes. Just find what works for you, what your body is asking for today. Allow your shoulders to melt over the edges of your bolster. And really start to open up here. For those who work with babies in the therapy world, I always like to say that guppy pose that we do with our babies that have a lot of tension in their bodies. This is kind of the same concept for us adults. Maybe soften your glutes. Allow your knees to relax slightly. Continue to notice that movement of your rib cage with your breath. And let's take about 5 breaths here. One more breath and let your exhale be long. Reach down for your knees and close your knees like a book. Maybe roll off onto your right side. Come off your bolster, your pillows. And let's prepare for our final Shavasana. We're going to take about a 2 to 3 minute Shavasana. I used to not like to do Shavasana when I would first practice because I was just so eager for the next one. But through practicing lots of yoga, I've come to really appreciate those last few moments of stillness. So move your bolsters, everything off to the side. Maybe you can use a blanket here underneath your head, bolster underneath your knees. Just allow your body to let go here. Savor in the sensations you're feeling from the poses. Focus on your breath for Shavasana. Maybe you start to wiggle your toes and fingers, slowly inviting soft movement back into your body. Good morning stretch always feels good here. And roll onto your right side for a momentary fetal pose. Rest your head on your elbow, curl your knees in. Take 2 breaths here. Use your top hand and push into your mat to slowly come upwards. You can meet me in a comfortable seat so we can close out our practice. Bring your hands to heart center in front of you. The light within me sees, honors, respects, and loves the light within each and every one of you. Namaste. Thank you for practicing my inaugural Yin Yoga video. I hope to do more soon. Remember to breathe.